Alright, welcome back to episode 2 of this early game Elden Ring guide where we're going to go after Margit the Fell. So we did those tutorial areas, both the tutorial and the Gatefront Ruins tutorial, and now we're going to go on a little trip to go gather some things up. So I went back to that first site of grace where we met Melina, and we're going to go run by a bunch of enemies. You can fight them if you want. I'm just going to run by them here. And we're heading kind of in this west-northwest direction towards Stormvale Castle. We're not going to go into the castle proper, but on the way up to the castle there's a really good Ash of War that is useful all the way through this game and all the way through the DLC. It's really fantastic if you get to know how to use it. So right there was a tiny golden tree. Anytime you see one of those for the first time, there will usually be a purple item at the base of it. That purple item is a golden seed, which you use to increase your flask charges. And then some magic wolves appear. And this is, I'm going to just use this as an example of a first fight on horseback here. This is a big pack of enemies. If you're on foot, they're going to surround you, and you're going to have a hard time. But it's pretty easy to take care of groups like this from horseback. You can essentially kite around them, and depending upon what side of the horse they're on, you either hold down R2 or L2, if they're on the right or left side, respectively. You basically just drag that through them to take the enemies down. While you're holding the button down, there'll be a constant hitbox that does damage, and then a bigger upswing attack at the end where you do a little bit more damage. But generally, for most weaker enemies in Limgrave and the Weeping Peninsula, you can essentially take them down this way, just by kiting around them and swinging away with your weapon.
Everyone who came with me.
So going to tag the Grace, and then right next to the Grace there's an NPC who is pretty important if you plan on using Spirit Ashes. We're going to be using Spirit Ashes, so she's pretty important. And she is going to be the trainer who is used to upgrade those into more powerful Spirit Ashes. So click through her dialogue, and then after you're done with that, there's another purple item right next to her on the outside of that little hut called a Stone Sword Key. That's used for unlocking these little standing gargoyle locks that usually hide treasures or sometimes fun little boss fights. Gonna continue going up the hill, and there's another pack of soldiers up here. These guys are kind of going to get in the way for the next thing I want to do, so I am going to take them out. Gonna sneak up behind the first one, take him out with a backstab, then I'm gonna hop up on Torrent, and it's basically a repeat of what I did with wolves, where I'm gonna basically kite around them and attack them with the heavy attacks from the spear from horseback. And once we get by them, we're going to keep our lookout for a rolling dung beetle on the road in front of us, except instead of dung, it's rolling a ball of treasure. So these guys will disappear if you don't kill them fast enough, so we're going to go up towards him, going to whiff with a heavy attack, so then I'm going to resort to using light attacks, which come out a little bit quicker, and stabby until he's gone. And when he's gone, you automatically get the treasure he was carrying, which is the Ash of War Wild Strikes. And there's a whole mess of soldiers on the road ahead of here. I'm just going to run away. I'm not ready to take them down quite yet. So let's talk about Wild Strikes a little bit. Wild Strikes is an Ash of War that goes on a lot of heavier weapons like great axes and great hammers. And what it does is it makes you swing those very slow weapons quickly. You know, it's not going to make them as fast as a dagger, but it makes them substantially faster than they normally are. And that's really great when you have on-hit effects like bleed buildup and frostbite buildup that inflict large chunks of damage when you've built those up to a certain threshold. So you can now build those up very quickly with a normally slow weapon. It also has a nice little nifty follow-up flip through the air move that does a ton of stance damage as well. Very handy Ash of War that is great all the way through the game. It's also very efficient to use. It doesn't cost a lot of FP, and it doesn't take a lot of stamina, so you can basically swing a weapon like that for days. It's really great.
Your thoughts, your ambition.
So while we were resting at that site of grace, I also added a charge to my flasks using a golden seed, and I leveled up and again kind of adding more strength here on our charge towards 16 strength. And next on the docket here is, apparently it's getting lost. So the thing with me in video games is I normally play them around like 10 p.m. midnight after, you know, the rest of the family's asleep, and I'm usually a little bit, well, I've had a few, you know, let's put it that way. So I meant to like go down one of these paths to the right here, or at least the item I want to get is down those paths. I go the wrong way. It's fine. We'll wander around. We'll fight some guys. And, yeah. Anytime you see fires or packs of these flaming slugs, by the way, run through those. There's usually a lot of smoldering butterflies in there that are good for our little, when we want to make fire pots using our crack pots. Keep an eye out for those. Great little farming areas for those smoldering butterflies. And right around here is when I start to have the realization of, this isn't where I wanted to go, is it? Yeah. So I just kind of keep hopping down these various ledges and stuff like that. Picking up all the crafting items I can. Again, we can sell those for money and we'll turn that into level ups. And just continue my wandering around. Off in the distance eventually, I do see kind of a formation of crucified people. There's usually something at the base of one of those. Usually it's just like a golden rune. Sometimes it's a good one. So whenever you see those, run off to those and take a look, see if it's a good rune at the base of those kind of crucifixion packs. This particular one also has a pack of soldiers underneath it. Good practice for fighting on horseback, just kiting them and, you know, using those sweeping kind of heavy attacks to take them down one at a time without any real risk to us. Even on horseback in some of these cases, it is advisable to try and draw them out one at a time, just so you can, well, draw them out one at a time, take them down one at a time, and, you know, not get mowed down by a pack of them. And here we get a great example of the weakness of fighting on horseback, which is if your horse gets killed, you are very vulnerable for a moment. Now, if this soldier was better, like a lot of the Kaiden warriors running around, they will actually crit you here and one-shot you. This guy, you know, he's kind of the dregs, so he doesn't bother with that. But that is one of the hazards of fighting on horseback, is you will get knocked off like that if you're just kind of not as good as you should be. And our reward at the base of that little nest of crucifixes is a golden rune 3, which actually isn't bad for this level. And while we're up here lost in this neck of the woods, there is kind of a little dungeon in this area. I'm just going to run in and tag the Site of Grace. We're going to come back here later, but it's convenient, you know, just to unlock the teleport back here while we're in the neighborhood. Lore-wise, there's kind of a cool enemy down at the base of it. And there's also a pretty good talisman that you get as a reward down there. I'm not going to be using it in this run-through, but very good talisman for general purpose usage is available down at the bottom of that. Like I said, we'll come back there later when we're a little better prepared. And now we are going to get ourselves unlost and go get the item that I was intending to get. So that item is the Strength Knot Crystal Tier. And what that does is we're going to unlock something a little bit later called a Physick Flask. The Strength Knot tier goes into there, and when you drink it, you get a buff that gives you plus 10 to your strength for 3 minutes. And as we're heading in that direction, there's kind of a large troll guy who's guarding it. We're just going to run by him on Torrent, and as we're running back away from him, we're just going to jump through the air to avoid his kind of like roar attacks, I guess, because those can one-shot Torrent. And like I said, that Strength Knot tier adds a ton to strength, and what it's going to do is that is the biggest buff to, I guess, melee damage you can get early on in the game, but it also kind of unlocks this cascade of effects where, in addition to doing more damage, it also lets you equip heavier items, which is going to let us equip a colossal weapon we'll get a little bit later here. And that colossal weapon has a great unique buff that then adds plus 5 to all your attributes. So it's kind of like this chain of taking this Strength Knot tier and putting it on a modest character and then adding a strength buffing talisman, then lets you get a massive buff to all your stats, which is very handy in the early boss fights. So at that grace there, well, forgot to record it, but I ate a couple of the golden runes that I had picked up, and that again got me up to the threshold where I can level up, and this is why you pick up all those golden runes, and this is going to get me up to that magic number of 16 strength. So at some point, I'll eventually remember that I was going for 16 strength and equip the gear that requires it, like the brass shield and the Lordsworn Greatsword, but apparently I don't remember that at the moment, and I just keep running around. It's okay. It's fine. So this boy on the horseback here, these are Kaiden sellswords. I really like their helmets. I'm not going to actively farm them for their helmets, but every time I see one, I am going to attack them, just in the hopes of getting one to drop eventually. Doesn't happen on this first one, but every time I see them, I'm going to basically try and murder them for their hats. And then while we're fighting him, there's someone kind of talking over us in the background. It is an NPC that we're going to go find in a second here. His name's Bach. He'll help us do alterations to gear, which is just, essentially aesthetic changes and removing a little bit of weight and a little bit of protection from armor for some visual trade-offs. Have to find him. He's hiding in a bush. Roll into the bush. Well, I guess he's been cursed into a bush. Roll into the bush, and he'll give us a bunch of mushrooms, which are, again, handy for making fire pots, like the smoldering butterflies earlier. And he's going to give us a hint on how to unlock that tailoring ability by telling us there's a cave down on the shore, so later on we're going to go exploring on the beaches to find that cave where we can unlock that alteration ability of his. We'll find him down there in a little while. And what's coming up next here is just going to be kind of like heading down to a church where there's going to be a couple of upgrades, including the Physick Flask. So it's just going to be playing in the background for a while now, riding down there, fighting a bunch of the people on the, basically from horseback on the way down to where that church is. And even though I was kind of like running by a lot of content earlier in the game, I do recommend that you actually get in the habit of engaging the little enemy groups that you start running into. So that's kind of what I'm going to be doing as we kind of head down to this area. It's just good practice. It gets you more acclimated with the controls, and it's just going to give you more experience for level ups. And I'm not a fan of like farming the same content over and over again in any game, really. But like the first time you go through an area, just, kill a bunch of people, as one does. So I'm going to take a step back from the recorded audio now as we kind of run down to the next checkpoint and battle through a bunch of enemies to get down to it. popping back on for a second here as I'm kind of watching through this. One thing you maybe are noticing is that I picked a caster class to start out with, which is a prophet, and I'm not casting very much. So I tend to play kind of hybrid characters in most games, hybrid caster melee characters, and essentially I don't like the spells early on in Elden Ring for the most part, the offensive spells anyways. Some people do, it's just personal taste. I'm not a huge fan. Long term, I kind of go with Prophet because I do like a lot of the faith-based buffs, and there are some incantations way later on down the line, past the scope of this video, some offensive incantations that I do like. But generally speaking, in the earlier portions, I like the melee combat a little bit better from a fuel perspective than I do the casting options that they have available. But spells do come kind of later in the progression. There's my Bad at Elden Ring build, which is basically what this guy would end up being. You can check out that particular video somewhere on my page to see how what sort of like offensive spells it would eventually be using. So we made it to the next site of grace, down a little ways down the hill here on our path down to the church to get the Physick Flask, and have an opportunity to level up again. So we've gotten our strength up to 16. So the next portion of our progression here is going to be ramping up endurance and vigor to increase the toughness of the character so that he can wear heavier armor and just take more of a hit in general. And at long last, I remember to equip the Lordsworn Greatsword, but not the Brass Shield, because I'm dumb. And after kind of looking at my experience level there, I realized I can just kind of quaff down a couple of golden runes, level up again, which I pump again into Endurance, which is now at 10, the same as Vigor. And then we're going to bust out that fancy new sword on horseback and try it out against the bunch of rotting people here, and just kind of get a feel for swinging that around from horseback. Once we kind of clear out that crowd, we're going to continue going down this path. Underneath a big arch, there's going to be a large group of demi-humans. They're basically goblins or orcs or something along that spectrum, at least Elden Ring's equivalent of those. Just a large pack of those, which again, riding around on horseback, you should just be able to kite them and take them down relatively easily. Just stick to the edges of the pack. Don't let yourself get in the middle of them and surrounded where they can all clobber on you. Just skirt around the edges, dragging that sword around, and you'll cut through them pretty easily. So all through that kind of glorious combat, showing off the combat superiority of the horseback warrior versus, I don't know, just under-evolved savages. There's kind of been this guy hollering in the background. So if we go up to the top of this stone arch, we can find Mr. Kenneth Haight, or Haight, something like that. He is kind of this seemingly pompous, arrogant noble that it seems like he's just set up for you to dislike him, but he's actually not a bad guy. So like, if he's going to give you a little quest to go down and clear out his fort, and if you help him out in the long term, you get kind of a nice kind of upgrade. But way down the road in the future, you will get a very nice kind of upgrade material that's kind of rare to find. But fundamentally, he's someone who is actually trying to make this messed up world of Elden Ring a better place. So as awful as he seems, as, you know, elitist and terrible, he's actually one of the good people, I think. So do him a solid and help him out on his little quest here. At least I do. And we'll get to that relatively shortly after we do a couple more things first. So I've been heading kind of, I guess, northeasterly-ish from Mr. Kenneth Haight towards a church in the background here. And this is where we are going to get our next big power boost. This is the Flask of Wondrous Physick, which you can use to essentially customize a couple of buffs for your character on demand. So across your adventures, you'll find these crystal tears. We already got the Strength Knot one. And at a Site of Grace, you can mix any two of those crystal tears you want into this reusable flask. You only get to drink it once in between rests at a Site of Grace, but it'll activate these relatively long-term and relatively powerful buffs. And I guess I should temper long-term. The ones I use are long-term. They're like on the order of 3 minutes long. There are some that are substantially shorter that are like 20, 30 seconds, stuff like that. They can be very powerful with very niche builds. I just prefer the longer lasting ones because, I don't know, I kind of want a buff that lasts all the way through a boss fight. But yeah, very handy tool. There's also an upgrade material for our flasks here that will make them, you know, restore more FP and health. Those are called Sacred Tears, and you can find those generally in churches all over the lands between. So I've been kind of continuing to the south here, heading generally in the direction. There's a large tree in the background that's called a minor tree. Heading towards that, but along the way, stopping at a wonderful mystical elevator that's it's one of those kind of wow moments where you realize, oh, this game really is that huge. So it's kind of this little unassuming kind of hut-like little building that you go and you step into it, and there's this little elevator, and you start going down and down and down and deeper and deeper and deeper into this wonderful kind of underground vista with just, you know, beautiful like stars at the top of the cavern and all that. And like at some point through your playthrough, you'll realize there is as much area below ground in this world as there is above ground, or almost as much. And it's just like one of those, wow, this game is massive and amazing, and I love it. So all we're going to do right here, though, is we're going to tag, there's a Site of Grace right at the bottom of this well. We're just in the neighborhood. We're going to grab that so we can teleport later. Everything that's in this area right now is really powerful relative to us and will kill us relatively easily. So we're just going to tag that Site of Grace and head back upstairs. So the next plan of action is once we get back to the surface from the underground well area here, is we are going to do Mr. Kenneth Haight a solid and clear out his fort. So we're going to get up there. We're going to head generally in a southeasterly kind of direction, picking up a few things along the way. There's going to be a map fragment. There's going to be, underneath that minor tree, there's going to be a crystal tier that we can pick up for our Physick flask. And importantly, there's going to be some giant giant monstrosity bears in this area that you do not want to mess with at all. Just run by them. They won't bother you if you don't get too close to them. You can literally grab things up from right under their feet and they'll keep on going about their business for the most part. But run right by them and keep going southish until we reach that fort. In this time to ponder, riding up the well, I remember the brass shield. So now we have our shiny shield that looks shiny. It's also very effective. It is one of the best shields in the game, which is funny considering you can get it right off the bat. But yeah, we are now starting to look more and more the part of a warrior here. So as soon as we get off the elevator, I run right to the base of the tree, the minor tree, where we find a couple of cracked tiers for our Physick Flask. There's the spiked cracked tier, which if you like using charged attacks, holding down the button for a long time until your character attacks, that makes those more powerful. And then the green spell crystal tier, which is a more generally useful, increasing your max stamina. As you continue heading away from that tier in the kind of easterly direction, you'll hear a howl in the background. You might, seeing as we've run into wolves, you might assume that's a wolf. That triggered a quest. So that little howl was important, and you have no idea it's important until you go back and talk to a merchant somewhere else. But as I'm continuing down that road, I realized I forgot to pick up a map fragment, which is useful since we are now off the edges of the original map fragment that we picked up. So looking at the map, the world map, I see the little pillar, and I head back towards that to pick up the next map fragment for this portion of Limgrave. And as we head towards that pillar, you will see one of the giant fucking bears that I warned you about earlier. Stay clear of him. He'll ignore you. Just run towards the little obelisk pillar thingy and pick up that map fragment, and then continue heading down to the southeast or east or south, somewhere in that direction, until we get to our target of the Kenneth Haight Fort, called Fort Haight. Then we'll continue on to the south, heading towards the fort, through some packs of definitely not goblins. Don't call them goblins. They're demi-humans, not goblins. Totally different thing. They're their own thing. But you can fight through those with your sword if you choose, like I am here. Good practice, good runes. I recommend doing it if you're new to the game. But fight through those, and eventually we'll make our way to the fort. So we're going to tag the Site of Grace right outside the fort here. Just in case we die, we'll kind of respawn back there now. And we're going to ride up to the top of the ramp outside the fort, but we're going to clear out the area outside the fort before we head in. So this is one of those cases where outside the fort, there's going to be a lot of soldiers, including one very large soldier called a Pumpkinhead. We do not want to aggro them all at once, so we're going to kind of try and skirt the edges of this outside area so that we can pick them off one at a time and have an easier go of it. There are also some demi-humans that are fighting the soldiers. Don't kill them. They will actually draw aggro and draw some of the soldiers and maybe kill some of them off for you. Note that there is a little golden sapling here with a golden seed that you can use to upgrade your flask, so make sure to get that while you're up here. And this is definitely an area for a little bit of sneaking, just so you don't bring in the aggro of all these guys at once. Like I said, try and pick them off one at a time if you can. So I snuck up behind that first guy, tapped R1 to backstab him and basically one-shot him. And the second soldier here, I'm going to guard counter him, so hold down L1, let him attack you. When he bounces off, R2, stance break him, then crit him with a tapped R1. Now, the Pumpkinhead guy kinda saw us, but he's also really dumb, so we can kind of, if we stay far away, go back into stealth mode and sneak up behind him as well. And the way these guys work is you don't want to hit them in the helmet, they'll take no damage, so we're going to sneak up behind him. We're going to use Stamp Upward Cut twice to break his stance. Then we can do a right one crit to basically kill him. Then we can just clean up the rest of the trash mobs and head up towards the fort entrance. Now you'll note the little gray tombstone over to the left. That means that this is an area where we can summon our spirit ashes of our little friendly little wolves to help us out. And we're definitely going to want to do that when we get inside because there's lots of people in there. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start running up the stairs inside the fort. And the way up to the top of the fort where the boss is over to the left, so you kind of go over to the left and start heading up the stairs. And this is where I forget that there's rats in this fort, so I summon my spirit ashes and keep running to the top, leave them to deal with the trash down at the bottom, while I run to the top to take down the knight. So the knight that Mr. Ken wants us to take down is almost identical to the one in episode 1 in the Gatefront Ruins. We're going to handle him the same way. Drink a blue flask if you need to after summoning your wolves, but just stamp upward cut him to death by pressing L2 and R2 to wail away at him until his stance is broken and you can kill him with a crit. We'll get rewarded with an Ash of Horror that does bleed damage, so it's probably pretty good, but I've never used it and have no idea. And my wolves are kind of beat up here. There's probably still some mobs downstairs, so I remember that I'm a caster and I know how to heal, so finally cast a spell to heal them, and then I just taken a moment to soak in that lovely view of that minor tree in the distance there. There's a tower over to the left, that up at the top of that tower there's a seal that unlocks something, well, it's half of a key to unlock something later on. I start going up the ladder. I have no idea why I stop and go back down. I'll just have to come back and get it later. I think I wasn't unsure if my wolves would despawn if I went to the top, so I decided to go back down and kill all the rest of the trash down in the bottom levels of the tower that I forgot to clean up earlier. Fun fact is that when a guard or soldier is standing at a ballista or crossbow or flamethrower or anything like that, you can't always sneak attack them with an R1, even if you're sneaking up behind them. So just use a charged heavy attack to take them out when they're, when they don't see you. It's still pretty sneaky. There's still some more rats and commoners downstairs that I'll just take out however I can. In the room in the dark is a very good cookbook. It has a lot of, I think it has blood grease and a couple of the recipes in it. I'm going to use an incantation for applying bleed buildup to a weapon. If you choose not to use that though, I think blood grease is in here, which is another way you can apply bleed buildup to weapons, or augment the bleed buildup of weapons that already have bleed damage on them. Great little book to pick up while you're here. And all the little blood roses in the area are useful for that recipe. And I think I'm going to wrap episode 2 there on these kind of slow and cautious trek through Limgrave and the Weeping Peninsula here. In a little bit here, I'll just teleport back to the site of grace outside Fort Haight, and after we rest there, we will pick up our adventure at a later date to go and take down Margit the Fell really, really easily. Alright, thanks for listening. If this was helpful to you, please like and subscribe. Alright, thanks.